September 9th, 1977, 1 in the morning. A yellow 1972 Corvette came around a curve on West Chester Pike in Pennsylvania way too fast. The driver lost control, crossed the median, and slammed head-on into a westbound SEPTA transit bus. It took rescue crews more than 45 minutes to extract the body from underneath. The driver was Jungle Jim Liberman, 3 days shy of his 32nd birthday. Here's what gets me. This was a guy who made a living at 230 miles an hour, fire burnouts, full quarter wheel stands, 100-mile-an-hour reverse runs, never lifted no matter how sideways the car got. And he didn't die in a Nitro explosion at some drag strip. He died on a suburban Pennsylvania road in his street car alone. One NHRA national event win in his entire career. One. And yet, in 2019, fans voted him the #1 funny car driver of the class's first 50 years. Over Prudhomme, over Bernstein, over Force. This is the story of how drag racing lost its biggest showman, not in a blaze of nitro at 200 miles an hour, but on a quiet stretch of suburban highway in the middle of the night. To understand why Jungle Jim was on that road at 1 in the morning, you have to understand the life he was living. At his peak, Liberman ran approximately 100 match race events per year. That's racing twice a week all year, constantly on the road, towing that funny car from track to track across the country, setting up, making runs, packing up, driving to the next town. The only guys keeping that kind of schedule were TV Tommy Ivo and Ed McCulloch. His home base was near West Chester, Pennsylvania, routes 202 and 926. That house became a kind of shrine in the drag racing community. 6 to 8 racing ramp trucks parked there at any given time, crew guys coming and going, equipment everywhere. It wasn't just a house, it was headquarters for a traveling circus that never really stopped moving. September 1977, he was preparing a new 7-Eleven-sponsored funny car, the next phase of the operation. Business as usual for a guy who'd been doing this for over a decade. But things had changed in his personal life. By that point, he and Pam Hardy, Jungle Pam, who'd been the face of the operation alongside him since 1972, were no longer together romantically. She confirmed this in later interviews. They'd separated before his death, though the exact timing isn't clear. The nomadic party lifestyle, she said, took its toll. Pam later called their relationship a flash in the pan, a bolt of lightning. Just worked, she said, but it was over. They were still associated professionally, the brand was still the brand, but the personal relationship had ended. So when September 9th came around, Jungle Jim was in a transitional moment. New car coming, old relationship gone, still grinding the match race circuit, still the biggest draw in funny car racing. Now let's talk about the vehicle he was driving that night, because it matters. The yellow 1972 Corvette wasn't just any car to Liberman. This was the same Corvette he'd been driving 5 years earlier when he spotted an 18-year-old Pamela Hardy hitchhiking near West Chester, 2 weeks before her high school graduation. He pulled over in that yellow Vette and everything changed. So this car had history. It was part of the Jungle Jim story in a way that went beyond just being transportation. 5 years of memories tied up in that machine. Corvettes of that era, the C3 generation, were fast cars, 300 horsepower or more depending on the engine option. Fiberglass body, independent rear suspension. In the hands of someone who knew how to drive, they could move. In the hands of someone who drove the way Jungle Jim drove, well, here's the thing about Liberman's driving style that everyone who knew him talked about. He never lifted. On the drag strip, when a funny car got sideways, most drivers would pedal it, back out, save the equipment for another run. That's the smart play. Jungle Jim kept his foot in it every single time, committed fully, let the chips fall. Berserko Bob Dorr, his crew chief, said there was a definite method to his madness on the track. But that mentality, the never lift mentality, apparently didn't stay at the track.
September 9th, 1977. Approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. West Chester Pike, Route 3, West Goshen Township, Pennsylvania. Just outside West Chester, not far from where Liberman lived, a road he knew well. He's driving eastbound, alone in that yellow Corvette. Middle of the night, probably not much traffic. The kind of empty road that invites speed if you're the type of person inclined toward it. The road curves. What happened next took only seconds, but I want you to picture the scene because understanding the geography matters. West Chester Pike has curves. It's not a straight highway. It winds through suburban Pennsylvania, and if you're going too fast when a curve comes up, you're in trouble. Liberman came around one of those curves at excessive speed. That's what multiple sources agree on, excessive speed. He lost control of the Corvette. The car crossed the median strip, went from the eastbound lanes across into the westbound lanes, and collided head-on with a SEPTA transit bus traveling in the opposite direction. a head-on collision between a fiberglass Corvette and a transit bus. The physics of that are brutal. The bus weighs somewhere around 25,000 pounds. The Corvette maybe 3,400. At speed, the Corvette doesn't stand a chance. The impact was catastrophic. The Corvette became wedged beneath the bus bumper and undercarriage, not just damaged, wedged under. The car was so thoroughly crushed and trapped that emergency responders couldn't get to Liberman quickly. It took more than 45 minutes to extract his body. 45 minutes. Picture that. Emergency crews on scene, knowing who's in that car, knowing they can't get him out. Working in the dark, in the middle of the night, on a suburban road, trying to free the body of drag racing's biggest star from underneath a transit bus. He was pronounced dead at Chester County Hospital at 1:52 a.m. Whether he died on impact or during those 45 minutes, I couldn't find documented. But at 1:52 a.m., it was official. 3 days before his 32nd birthday. Now, I have to be completely honest with you about what we don't know, because the historical record has significant gaps, and I think you deserve the truth. There's no documented toxicology report in any source I could find. None. The Philadelphia Inquirer noted in a retrospective article that Liberman had battled drug and alcohol abuse during his life, but that's mentioned as background information, not as an explanation for what happened that night. No direct connection to the crash is made. Was he impaired? I don't know. The record doesn't say. Given what's documented about the match race lifestyle of that era, Pam Hardy called it boogie nights on methanate. It's not an unreasonable question to ask, but I can't answer it with facts, so I won't speculate. There are no official investigation findings that I could locate explaining exactly what caused him to lose control. No police report details in the public record, no mechanical analysis of the Corvette, nothing documented about what specifically went wrong in those final seconds. One unverified forum post, and I'm only mentioning this because you'll probably encounter it if you dig into this story yourself, claims that something may have failed in the Corvette's rear suspension based on a prior incident with the car. But that's speculation from an internet commenter decades after the fact. I'm not presenting it as established fact, because it isn't. What multiple sources do agree on is simple. He was going too fast for that curve. That's the consistent detail across everything I could find. Excessive speed. The man who never lifted on the drag strip apparently didn't lift on the street either. There's also a detail that's conspicuously absent from the historical record. No documentation about whether anyone on the bus was injured, the bus driver, any passengers who might have been aboard at 1 in the morning. That information seems to have fallen through the cracks of history. The story became entirely about Jungle Jim, and whoever was on that bus faded into the background. Now, there's a small source conflict I should mention. Most sources describe the bus as westbound, traveling in the opposite direction, which Liberman crossed into after losing control. But at least one source, the Motorsports Hall of Fame, describes it as a parked bus. That's a significant difference. A head-on collision with a moving bus is one thing. Crashing into a parked bus suggests a completely different scenario. Maybe he went off the road entirely. I went with westbound because multiple sources corroborate that version, including Wikipedia and the Philadelphia Inquirer. But I'm flagging the conflict because this audience catches inconsistencies, and you should know the record is not perfectly clear.
The news hit the drag racing world hard. This wasn't just another driver dying. This was the biggest name in match racing. The guy who'd done more than anyone to popularize funny cars. The man who could fill grandstands at tracks across America just by showing up. Gone at 31. On September 23, 1977, 2 weeks after the crash, National Dragster published a tribute issue. The official NHRA publication, the sanctioning body that Liberman had largely avoided in favor of match racing, acknowledged what he meant to the sport. I want to read you a substantial part of it because they said it better than I could. Outlaw or superstar, flaky or fantastic, whatever one's personal opinion of Jungle Jim, the sport will not be the same without him. He's gone before his time, perhaps even before his prime. His is a name that is synonymous with funny cars simply because he did more than any other man to popularize funny car drag racing. The success that those hybrids now enjoy is Jungle's legacy. We are all indebted to him for it. That's not his friends eulogizing him. That's the institution itself,
the one whose events he rarely attended, whose points chase he never prioritized, recognizing his contribution. We are all indebted to him for it. From NHRA, about a guy with one national event win. The immediate aftermath tells you something about how quickly life moves on in racing. That 7-Eleven sponsored funny car Liberman was preparing to debut? His brother-in-law, Carl Ruth, campaigned it after his death. The show went on. It had to. There were dates booked, promoters expecting cars, fans who'd bought tickets. The machinery of match racing didn't stop because one driver died, even if that driver was Jungle Jim. Pam Hardy stepped away from the spotlight. The Jungle Pam era was already ending before the crash. They'd separated, but his death closed that chapter completely. She'd go on to marry Bill Hodgson, an engine tuner, staying connected to the racing world, but in a completely different way. A track promoter named Vinnie Knapp called a young driver named John Force after Liberman died, asked him to become the next Jungle Jim, carry the showman's torch forward. Force, of course, went on to do exactly that. 16 championships, more wins than anyone in funny car history. And Austin Coyle, Jungle Jim's best friend, became Force's crew chief. The DNA transferred directly. But that's a story for another video. I want to talk about the irony of how he died, because I can't stop thinking about it. Jungle Jim Liberman made a career out of controlled chaos, fire burnouts that looked spontaneous but were carefully engineered, larger fuel and water tanks specifically built into the car, wheel stands that looked reckless but were calculated, reverse burnouts at 100 miles an hour that thrilled crowds but required real skill to pull off safely. He drove funny cars at 230 miles an hour, sat inches from a nitromethane-burning engine, putting out thousands of horsepower, in cars that could and did explode and catch fire. Pam Hardy was asked once if she'd driven one. Her response, "Hell no, and hell no. Those things could blow up and catch fire." That was his day job, defying death at drag strips across America, weekend after weekend, year after year. 100 events a year for most of the 70s, thousands of passes in the most dangerous vehicles in motorsports. And he died in a Corvette on a suburban road at 1 in the morning, alone. The guy who never lifted at the track apparently never lifted on the street either. That mentality, the commitment, the refusal to back off, worked in a funny car on a quarter-mile drag strip with safety crews standing by. It doesn't work on West Chester Pike at 1 a.m. with a transit bus coming the other way. There's no moral to that story, no lesson that wraps it up neatly. It's just tragic and strange, and somehow fitting and unfitting all at once. The question that lingers almost 50 years later is, would Jungle Jim be as legendary if he'd lived? He died at 31, never got old, never had a decline, never went through that phase where former champions hang on too long and tarnish their legacy. He went out at the absolute peak of his fame, when he was still the biggest draw in match racing, when the legend was still being actively built. Would he have won multiple NHRA championships if he'd shifted focus to the national event circuit? Maybe. The equipment was capable. He'd run 5s. He'd won Englishtown. He could hang with anybody when he wanted to. Would the match race circuit have faded, leaving him without a stage? Probably it did, and a lot of those guys became nostalgic figures, trading on past glory. Would he have invented something that changed drag racing, like Pam Hardy believed? She thought so, said he had that kind of innovative mind. We'll never know any of it. The innovation died with him on West Chester Pike. What we do know is that in 2019, NHRA fans voted him the #1 funny car driver of the class's first 50 years. One win, greatest anyway, because the people who were there remembered what mattered, and what mattered wasn't the trophy case. John Force, 16 championships, more wins than anyone in funny car history, said it himself. Maybe I'll win, and maybe I won't, and maybe I shouldn't, because he is the greatest of all time. I don't base that on winning championships or finding money.
The cars survived if you want to see them. The 1973 Vega, the one fans voted #1 funny car of all time in 2016, is at the Don Garlits Museum in Ocala, Florida. Big Daddy bought it through a Hemmings classified. The car changed hands a few times after Liberman's death, ran as U.S. Mail and Thor under different owners. The original flat nose is lost. Nitro Nick Boninfante modified it, but the car is preserved. The
The 1969 Nova is at the World of Speed Museum in Wilsonville, Oregon. Restored to running condition, it's made passes at Woodburn Drag Strip, still runs. Tribute cars campaign at nostalgia events today. Army Armstrong's 1972 Camaro-bodied Tribute, Texas Jungle Racing Team's IHRA Postalgia entry. Every time one fires up, there's a connection back to what Liberman built. Pam Hardy is still with us, around 71 or 72 now. Makes occasional appearances, backed up Jack Beckman in the 1916 NHRA Finals in Pomona during the 50th anniversary celebration. Runs junglepam.com. Randy Liberman, Jungle Jim's son, attends California Hot Rod reunion and nostalgia events. Said something that captures his father's philosophy. Dad was all about the fans. His thing was you always had to make the fans happy. If there's no fans, there's no racing. That house near Routes 202 and 926? When it was demolished in 2016, fans scavenged parts from the building, bricks, door frames, whatever they could get. That's how much his memory still means. So that's the story of how Jungle Jim died. Not in a nitro explosion, not in a fire at some drag strip, not doing the thing he was famous for. He died in a yellow Corvette, on a curve he probably knew well, going too fast, alone, at 1 in the morning, 3 days before his 32nd birthday. The guy who never lifted finally met something he couldn't power through. Inducted into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame in 1993, NHRA's Top 50 Drivers at number 17 in 2001, number 1 funny car driver of the class's first 50 years in 2019. Not bad for an outlaw who only won once. If you were there, if you saw him race, if you knew him, if you have any information about that night that isn't in the historical record, drop it in the comments. This story still has gaps, and the people who were there are the only ones who can fill them. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more drag racing history.